Hi everyone, I am here with a review of Lesson 2. This review is for violin players, and if you don't have your instrument out right now, I would encourage you to pause the video and go get it because we're actually going to play through some of your homework right now. This is I have up on the screen page 5, which was part of our homework. Everyone should have either a lesson book or a photocopy of page 5 that I gave you this week. And right now you actually don't need it out because I have it up on the screen and it should be easier to follow along this way. So the nice thing about this lesson book is that it always tells you what's new at the top. So everything else on the page is kind of like a review, and then you look out for the new things in the exercises throughout the week. So the first thing over here on the left, it says new note, open G string. The nice thing for us is that this actually isn't a new note to play. It's just a new note to read. So remember, our first week in our first lesson, we played our notes E, A, D, and G. That G is the new note that we're reading this week. You can see it's really low on the staff. In fact, it's so low they had to add 2 extra lines called ledger lines that extend the staff either up or down, and in this case it's down because the note is lower. The good thing is this is the lowest note you'll ever have to read on violin because you can't play any lower than a G, than the open G. And then over here it says the other new thing is a repeat sign. I have a feeling this is not new for most people. I think most of you have seen a repeat sign in music class. When you see those 2 dots, it just means go back and do it again. So if we have a line in our homework this week with a repeat sign at the end, when you get to the very end, you go back and do it again. So I'm looking at number 5, the 3-string dance. And what we're going to do right now is go through and read the note names out loud. You can read them out loud with me as I go along. So here we go. D, 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 G, 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 D, 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 A, rest. A, A, D, 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 A, D, D, G, 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 rest. So if you got that, great job. We're going to go on ahead and play it right now. If you didn't get that, it's okay. You can just pause the video, go back to where I started reading it again, and read it through again. So I'm going to put my violin up on my shoulder. I'm going to tilt my head a little bit, make sure I have some nice posture while I'm playing. Remember, your right hand is the one that does the pizzicato. We're going to make an L, put our thumb on that fingerboard, wiggle that index finger, and place it on the D string since that is our first note. And here we go. We're going to play through it. D, G, 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 D, 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 A, rest. A, D, 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 A, D, G, G, rest. Great, nice job. So if you got that, we're going to move on. If you didn't get that, again, you can just pause it and go back. That's the nice thing about playing with a video. If you don't get something the first time, you can repeat it as many times as you need to until you feel comfortable with it. But right now, I'm going to move on to number 6. Recover the bow. Now, this tends to make people a little nervous because we haven't used the bow yet, and that's okay. We're just going to play Recover the Bow pizzicato. We're not going to use the bow yet. I promise it's coming soon, and I appreciate everyone waiting patiently for that. But we're going to go through and read the notes for Recover the Bow, and you'll notice at the end there is a repeat sign. So when we get to the end, we're going to go back and read them again. Okay, so here I go from the beginning. A, rest. D, D, rest. A, D, G, rest. D, D, rest. G, rest. D, A, D, rest. A, rest. D, rest. A, D, G, rest. D, rest. G, rest. D, A, D, rest. Nice job. We're going to go through and play it now. Get that instrument up on your shoulder. Now, this time we're starting on the note A. Typically, we've been starting on D, so don't let that one trick you. We have our L. put your thumb right against the fingerboard, place that index finger this time on the A string, and here we go. A, rest. D, rest. A, D, G, rest. D, rest. G, rest. D, A, D, and repeat. A, rest. D, rest. A, D, G, rest. D, rest. G, rest. D, D, rest. Nice job. Now, if you can play 5 and 6, we just went through those together, then I know that you can play 7, 8, and 9. They have all of the same things in them. It's just more practice of reading the same notes. One thing about number 9 that I'll point out is that this is a 2-line exercise. Now, we've only played things that have been 1 line up to this point. And a lot of times when people get to the end of the first line, they stop and then they kind of like go to the next line and restart. There's like a little bit of an awkward pause in there. When you play music that is more than 1 line, when you get to the end of the line, you go right down to the next one. It's just like when you're reading a book. When you get to the end of a line in the book, you go right down to the next line. You don't add a pause. So for this one, you'd play, if like I'm over here on the end, if you look where my mouse is, I'd play D, rest, D, rest, A. So I went right into it. So that's the homework in the book. We also learned the beginning of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So let me get that up right now. Here it is. And to play the beginning of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, we learned a new note, B. And B is not an open string that we have, so we had to learn how to make that note. And that's a note that you make by putting a finger down on the string with your left hand. So before we even play Twinkle, we went through the correct posture and positioning for playing a note. So this is with your left hand this time. Your thumb is going to go right over here. It's just going to kind of rest right here on the side of the neck of the instrument. Okay, and when you play a note, you're going to use your fingers of your left hand, and you're going to use your fingertips. So instead of your finger looking like that, on the string, it's going to look like that. It's going to be nice and rounded. So I have my thumb over here on the side, and everyone should have either, some people only got 1 sticker on their instrument because I ran out. Most people have 3, and you're looking for the yellow sticker. You're going to place where the yellow sticker is marking on the A string. So your first finger, your index finger, is going down on the A string. It should look kind of like this. Oops, sorry, I'm not in the frame there. There it is. Okay, so without putting the finger down, the string A sounds like this. This is the pitch A. When I put my index finger down, all of a sudden the note becomes B, and it sounds like this. Okay, the only way to play A again is to take that index finger off. So A, B, A, B, plucking the same string every time. Now, we're going to also use the D string because the notes for Twinkle are D, D, A, B, B, and A. So here we go. D, D, A. Put the index finger down, B, B, now take it off, A. So one more time, a little bit more fluid through it. It's D, D, A, B, B, and A. So that's the beginning of Twinkle. We actually are going to learn how to put more fingers down to make even more notes this week, which is super exciting. So take a minute and look through, or take some time this week and look through page 5. Also make sure you have that beginning of Twinkle down, and we're going to do some more exciting things in our lesson this week. Happy practicing.